All right, hello and welcome to Double Play Sports. Today is Friday, January 29th. I'm James alongside Pat. Today we're going to be covering the last week in baseball, and free agency is really heating up. We've had some big days for free agent signings. So we're not going to talk about all of them. We are going to mention most of them. So first one, the Cubs signed former Dodgers World Series champ Jock Peterson to a one-year deal. The contract status is unknown, although it's expected to be around $7 million. The Mets have signed Rays relief pitcher Aaron Loup to a one-year, $3 million deal. The Giants have signed second baseman Tommy La Stella to a two-year, $14 million deal. The Cardinals re-signed their franchise pitcher Adam Wainwright to a one-year, $8 million deal. The Yankees signed relief pitcher Darren O'Day to a one-year, $1.75 million deal. The Tigers signed former Mets and Nationals catcher Wilson Ramos to a one-year, $2 million deal. The Orioles signed Freddie Galvis, free agent shortstop, to a one-year, $1.5 million deal. The Red Sox signed Padres pitcher Garrett Richards to a one-year, $10 million deal. The Red Sox also signed Dodgers player Kike Hernandez to a two-year, $14 million deal. The Yankees shipped Adam Ottavino to the Red Sox in a salary dump. They also gave up prospect Frank Herman. And today we found out that Mets playoff legend Daniel Murphy has retired. He had a great career .296 batting average, a three-time All-Star, two-time slugger, and NLCS MVP. Whew. So that was a lot. We're now going to go into our Around the Horn section. So we're going to start with the just some rumors. The Rockies and the Cardinals have been rumored to be discussing possibly a Nolan Arenado trade. Pat, this is big news. We thought originally Braves or Cardinals, then we thought Dodgers maybe, then we thought Mets maybe. So do you think this one's realistic?
I think it is really realistic because when you look at the different pools of prospects for each team that could go either way, if you look at the Cardinals and the Rockies, I think for sure if Nolan Arenado is going to the Cardinals, you'll see one of their bigger contracts on a veteran like Carpenter or Martinez be going back to the Rockies. And I think it's about a 95% chance that you see Nolan Gorman go the other way, as
Absolutely.
of course he's a top third base prospect.
Yeah, and if it's not Gorman, then it'll 100% be Matt Liberatore, is another one of their top prospects. So yeah, that's our first thing we're going to talk about.
All right, hi, this is James. This is just an update. The Cardinals and Rockies did complete a Nolan Arenado trade, although it was a little bit of an interesting one. The Rockies gave up Nolan Arenado and $50 million of Nolan Arenado's contract, which they will be paying for, and received a whole lot of nothing, really. It was an awful trade from the looks of it right now for the St. Louis Cardinals, or for the Colorado Rockies, sorry. Giving up the highlight prospect was Austin Gomber, really, who's not even a prospect. It does not look good for the Rockies, especially as Trevor Story is frustrated. So I'm not really sure, but it wasn't a great trade for the Rockies. The Cardinals run away with a steal. I'm giving this trade an A.
The Yankees acquired Pirates pitcher Jameson Taillon, who was returning from his second Tommy John. The last time he was healthy in a full season, he went 14-10 with a 3.20 ERA and a 4.9 WAR. So obviously they're getting a pitcher that can do some serious damage if he's healthy. He's had a lot of health problems since he was the second overall pick in 2010. Pat, what are your thoughts on Yankees acquiring Jameson Taillon?
I think it's, of course, Pirates are shipping out everybody now. They had Musgrove the week before this week, Taillon. Both pretty similar moves in terms of what they got in return. Although I think definitely they got something better for Musgrove than they did for Taillon. But, it's obviously a good move. The Yankees were in need of a pitcher because even though they seem to have about like 6 or 7 guys that could end up starting for them this year, there's a lot of question marks in that rotation.
And Taillon is another one, though. You've got Luis Severino hasn't pitched in a few years. Corey Kluber hasn't pitched a full season since 2018. Domingo Herman's coming back from an injury. Jordan Montgomery is off injured. And now you got Taillon, who's had Tommy John surgery twice. So next move is the Nationals signed our number 5 relief pitcher, Brad Hand, to a one-year, $10.5 million deal. In the last 3 years, he has had a 2.85 ERA and 82 saves. Obviously, was really good for the Padres and then was traded to the Indians. So good move from the Nats. They're really starting to shape up that team. And although they're stuck in a division with the powerhouses and the Mets and the Braves, if we see an extended playoffs, which we're not really sure on yet, the Nationals should definitely be in there.
Yeah, obviously everybody in that division trying to make moves right now. Phillies, of course, even though their main focus has been trying to bring back Real Muto all off season, they did bring in some more bullpen pieces like trading for Jose Alvarado and signing Archie Bradley. So all the teams in that division really are headed in the right direction, with the exception of the Marlins. If you look at the Marlins, you're really not sure what you're going to get from them. You don't know what team you're going to see. Are you going to see the team you saw 2 years ago? Are you going to see a team full of surprise breakout guys like you did this past year that can end up winning a playoff series? Even we really don't know what we're going to see from them, but it's a great move for the Nationals. And when you think about it, Nats took him away from possibly going to the Braves or the Mets, also like he was rumored.
Yeah, the Marlins are the most who knows team I think ever, because you come out 3 games into the season, 17 of their players test positive for COVID-19. They come back with a pretty much team of replacement players and an Olympic silver medalist speed skater in Eddie Alvarez, and Don Mattingly somehow leads this team to 5 straight wins after that, and then to sweep the Cubs in the first round, who were obviously a pretty good team. Obviously, they fell to the Braves, who came within 1 game of the World Series, so what did you expect? But the Marlins were a very fun team to watch last year, and even though it's a stacked division, they're kind of, you never know, really, with them. So next thing that happened, we just talked about the Phillies have all offseason been trying to retain JT Realmuto. He's back, 5-year, $115 million, which is big money. He is our number 1 catcher in baseball, but record money for a catcher, beating out Buster Posey. Going to make about $23 million a year, which is a lot, especially with the Nationals having guys like Zach Wheeler on contract and Bryce Harper and Andrew McCutchen, and Arenado coming up, and they might want to bring back Rhys Hoskins, and it goes on and on and on. So it was a little bit, Real Muto is a good move for them to make. It was more money than I think they should have given Real Muto. It's probably the money they could have given Real Muto, considering their circumstance with him and how much money he wanted. But it's a little bit of an interesting move, especially with the team that really had some money issues this year.
Yeah, even though the money was big for them, I think that's got to be the right move. They have not a GM, their GM is Sam Fold, but they have a new executive with Dave Dombrowski, who, he likes to spend his money. And, Real Muto did get the money he wanted, or about the money he wanted. And, the Phillies brought back the best catcher in baseball. No matter what way you put it, I don't really think you can see that much of a negative side of the deal. Of course, they do have some money problems right now, but, he is JT Realmuto.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next move, the Twins signed the best defensive shortstop in baseball in Andrelton Simmons to a 1-year, $10.5 million deal. He's had a 282 batting average over the last 3 years. And like I said, he's won 4 Gold Gloves and countless other defensive awards. It's interesting, though, because the Twins kind of have a pretty great shortstop, and not great, but good, solid shortstop in Jorge Polanco. I like the move for them. It solidifies that infield, which can be a little bit more shaky defensively. You're not sure what you're going to get from Miguel Sano, who's not a natural first baseman. Luis Arraez, or Arraez, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, is a solid bat. Don't really know about his defense. Josh Donaldson still can play some defense. But it was an interesting move. I didn't really see it coming for them. I really thought Simmons was going to either the Phillies or the Athletics. But Pat, what are your thoughts on the Simmons signing?
Yeah, it's a good move. You look at their defense straight up the middle right now. It's looking really good with Simmons at shortstop and, of course, Buxton in center field. And, that's what you want from a team. It's what you want from a playoff team. Adding Simmons also gives them depth with, like you said, Polanco, Arraez, and Simmons, all as middle infield options. And, what they're missing right now is some pitching, because That's just about what everybody's missing nowadays. But
I mean,
they
are they though? I mean, they have Kenta Maeda, they have Jose Barrios, they have Michael Pineda, they have Randy Dobnak, and they have J.A. Happ. That's a pretty solid full rotation.
Well, what are you going to see from Pineda? What are you going to see from Happ?
I mean, the last time we saw Pineda, he was pitching at a very good level. Obviously, that was with steroids, but he finished out last year after a suspension pretty strong. And, J.A. Happ's aging, but he can eat up innings. And, I mean, Dobnak really looked good at the start of the season. So, I mean, who knows? But I think their big move that they need to make right now is bringing back Nelson Cruz, because obviously the best not defensive player, best designated hitter, and a guy who, despite his age, can hit up to 40 home runs, if not more, in a full season. He's an unreal talent.
Timeless.
And they really need to bring him back.
Yeah, of course, you look at the bullpen, you're not really sure what you're going to see from Taylor Rogers. If you see how he was in 2019, you're perfect. Your bullpen's fine. If you see how he was in 2020, then you're a little bit more shaky. But
same thing with Hansel Robles.
Yeah.
All right, next move. This one I did not see coming even a little bit, really. The Blue Jays have been rumored around a lot of teams, but and a lot of players, not teams, including Chris Bryant. But Marcus Semien was not really one of them. He was rumored around the Dodgers and the Phillies and the Reds. And so the Blue Jays gave him a 1-year, $18 million deal, coming off a down year, but we've seen the production he can put up, similar to what Marcell Ozuna got last year. He was third place in MVP in 2019. He's our 10th best shortstop in baseball. Obviously a very, very solid shortstop. The Blue Jays are probably going to have him play third and move Vladdy over to first like they did last year, and then have Bichette and Biggio play up the middle. I like the move for them. I think he's a much cheaper and more reliable option than Chris Bryant. What are your thoughts on the Semien signing?
Yeah, it's a good move. Like you said, pretty much same deal as Ozuna to the Braves the past offseason. A historically good player that had a bit of a down year. And then, they sign a 1-year prove-it deal, just like Cole Hamels. Same deal. Of course, he didn't play this past year, but obviously it worked out very well with Ozuna.
Yeah.
And, Semien adds another more so veteran presence to that young infield.
Yeah. The next thing, it's a sad last few days for Yankees fans. Masahiro Tanaka will be returning to play for the Rakuten Eagles after a great 7 years with the Yankees. There's not too much to say. He was a very solid, consistent pitcher for them and a nice presence on that team. So I'm sure he'll be missed.
Yeah. He's been their guy, especially when they get to the playoffs for the past 7 years. Like you said, whenever they get to the playoffs, he turns it on. He always has a solid regular season. It's sad to see him go back to Japan, but it should be fun to watch for them over there if he has any type of numbers he did the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. He went like 24-0 with a 1.30 ERAs last year in Japan, which is just insane. So final move of our Around the Horn section. The Mets traded pitcher Steven Matz to the Toronto Blue Jays, which may not be the move you think we'd finish this off with, but there is some things that may come after this deal. Matz had a poor year in 2020, has been an okay starter in the past. The Mets fleeced them. They got two very solid pitching prospects in Josh Winkowski and Yennies Diaz, not really sure, but who were both had great years in the last minor league season in 2019. And they get Sean Reed-Foley, who, from what Matz's role was going to be, Reed-Foley is more fit to do that role, it seems, who is a really good swingman who had a sub-2 ERA in 2020 and kind of solidifies that Mets bullpen. So great deal for the Mets. They just cut $5.2 million more with Matz's contract. They said they were going to cut some salary space. The Angels are out on Trevor Bauer. The Dodgers don't have the kind of money that they should give to Bauer. So, I mean, what's going on here? I think the Mets are kind of the at least clear favorite as of right now. They also gave an offer to Trevor Bauer. So the Mets are definitely right now the clear favorites to sign Bauer.
Yeah, in terms of that trade, I like it a lot for both sides. The Mets, of course, one of their main things with their new regime, bringing in, of course, Steve Cohen as a new owner, brought in Sandy Alderson. He wanted to, rebuild the farm system. Of course, they would have had the number 4 prospect in baseball in Jared Kelenic right now, but he was shipped off a couple of years ago for Edwin Diaz and Robinson Cano.
That one
But
didn't
of
age
course,
well.
that didn't. But of course, they're trying to rebuild the farm system. They bring in 2 very young pitching prospects that have had nothing but solid production throughout their time in the minors. And you look at Sean Reed Foley. He's certainly a high upside guy.
Yeah.
You're not sure really what you're going to get from him, but he's a high upside guy. And in terms of Bauer, I think you're definitely looking at the Mets. The Angels said they're out, like you said. Dodgers, I'm not sure where they're standing from on a money point right now because, like Jeff Passan was saying, he thinks Bauer might be holding out on an offer from the Dodgers.
Mhm.
Now, of course, go back to all the thing with Bauer's only going to sign a 1-year deal,
That's not happening.
and and I don't think you can say that that's not happening. I would not be because he said one of his main things is he wants to win a championship. There's no better place in baseball to be if you want to win a championship right now than the Los Angeles Dodgers. And you can't dispute that.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if he signs a 1-year deal there for a little bit of a pay cut and gets right back into this free agency thing after some sort of successful season with the Dodgers
Yeah.
this year. But then, of course, you look at a mystery team. So there's a
Mhm.
possibility like Boston, San Francisco were connected to him early in the offseason. Maybe even Houston was connected to him at one point.
Yeah.
So, you're not really sure what you're going to get there with Bauer.
Yeah, I agree. He also said recently he kind of wants this contract to be, yes, he wants it to be a pitching contract, but he also kind of wants it to be a sponsorship between the team and his branding, which obviously he's a very outspoken and popular player, very exciting player. And I think the Mets are kind of a perfect team for that. I mean, Steve Cohen's, he's also just completely applauded everything Steve Cohen's done. And Steve Cohen's been super open and super helpful and always looking to see what the fans want. So I think the Mets is kind of a great environment for Bauer. I definitely agree. There is no better place to win a championship right now with than the Los Angeles Dodgers. And there could be a mystery team. I mean, even Seattle was linked to him at one point. We don't really know. You never know, really. All right, so our final thing we're going to talk about today is this week was the announcing of the Hall of Fame ballots. And disappointingly, no players were inducted. And I'm really seeing some differences in the Hall of Fame and how the sports writers vote. And to be completely honest with you, I like to stay as unbiased and like unaffected with all my opinions, but this is bad. Like there are so many really talented players on that ballot that these guys, these writers who have hated every change about baseball since Mickey Mantle retired are getting all salty about. Like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were both Hall of Famers before they went on steroids. Yes, going on steroids is not the way to spend your baseball career. But both of those guys, I do believe, deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Also,
Jeff Passan the other.
Yeah, you can talk about
okay. We'll cut this part.
Yeah.
Just that little 30-second segment. We'll just put that out there. Okay. Jeff Passan was talking the other day. Of course, he had a Hall of Fame vote, just like anybody that's in the baseball media for at least 10 years. They get their vote. But he gave up his vote because he didn't like the system. And he said the other day in an interview that all in all, the Hall of Fame is a museum. It's to tell the story of baseball. And anybody that's going to see the story of baseball and is going to the Hall of Fame, I think have a pretty good grasp on what happened in Barry Bonds' career. I don't think it's a secret to anyone that he was on steroids.
Yeah.
Steroids or without steroids, you always hear the argument, well, he still had to swing the bat, still had to hit the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course, that's true. At the same time, helps a little bit when your head goes from the size of an orange to a watermelon. But
So,
just, I think it's a little ridiculous to keep these guys out. Schilling's trying to take himself off the ballot.
yeah.
And MLB seems to be saying, no, we're going to leave you on there, which, is completely reasonable because you look at Bonds, you look at Clemens, you look at Schilling. Every year, for like a couple months a year, their names are just completely dragged through the mud because they're like, no, he doesn't deserve that. He cheated. He's a bad person. All these types of things. It's very understandable to not want to have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah.
But, I think, but then you look at the Veterans Committee. I don't know if the Veterans Committee is going to want to put guys like that in. But anyways, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So in the case of Curt Schilling, 71.1% this year. He got 70% last year. He's in outrage. He wants off the ballot, which is understandable. Like you said, he had a great career, 216 wins, a 346 ERA, 3,106 strikeouts, and 3 World Series wins, including a World Series MVP. Schilling had some problems after his career, which may be the thing that's keeping him out. And that's the same thing that happened with Pete Rose.
Now, you know what? Hold on. I want to touch on something. If Barry Bonds is not a Hall of Famer because he did steroids, there is not a chance you can let Alex Rodriguez into the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. Because when you look at
he did
the
steroids, and he lied about it on national television. Just saying.
When you look at the numbers that people are like, oh, I could have hit 500 dingers on steroids. No, you couldn't. The numbers that Barry Bonds put up were video game-like. They were unhuman-like when on steroids. He already had 400 home runs and 400 stolen bases before he went on steroids. If you're going to tell
and then
story,
you look at other guys. Canseco, McGuire, A-Rod, like I said, even guys like Ryan Braun is another guy that did steroids. Like, why didn't they hit 72 homers? Like, what's going on here? If you could do it, why couldn't they?
Yeah. I don't know. Cooperstown will change forever if they are inducted. And I understand why there may be some people who don't like that. But you can't, like Passan was saying, and Jeff Passan's a great baseball writer and probably the most credible baseball source in the game today.
You know what? Hold on. I want to say another thing about the interview with Passan. The character clause that is keeping Curt Schilling out of the Hall of Fame is completely ridiculous. If you're going to have a character clause for them being a bad person, how come guys that are on the edge of the Hall of Fame don't have a character clause that gets them in because they were good guys and they help their community? You can't just have it one way because it pushes your narrative.
Yeah, and exactly like you're saying, there have been some great people who aren't in the Hall of Fame, but you're going to keep
if we're going to have a character clause, Derek Jeter should have gotten 150% of the vote.
Absolutely. Throw I don't know, put Big Papi in his 3rd year in his career. I don't know, but the Cooperstown will change forever if these players are inducted, but you can't tell baseball's story without Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. You just can't. So we're going to talk about some guys who took big steps forward, and both of these guys deserve to take big steps forward. Scott Rowland went from 35.3% last year to 52.9%. Obviously one of the best defensive third basemen ever. Very, very good player, definitely a Hall of Famer in my eyes. And Billy Wagner hopped up from 31.7% to 46.4%. And probably the greatest, he's the greatest left-handed reliever ever. And he's only getting 46.4%. Todd Helton. Oh, Coors effect. The dude still batted .316 and won 3 Gold Gloves and has 369 homers, 45%. Jeff Kent, one of the top 3 greatest hitting second basemen of all time. Won an MVP over Barry Bonds, 32%. Torrey Hunter, 9 Gold Gloves, 350 dingers, almost 2,500 hits, 9.5%. Granted, it is his first year on the ballot, so I'll give him some slack, but still. Also, Aramis Ramirez, sorry about that, got 1% of the ballot after 386 career home runs. How does
He
that
barely
happen?
stayed on.
He didn't
And
stay
you know
on.
what? Oh, wait.
No,
Oh, did he?
Aramis only got 1% of the vote.
Oh, we only got one. Oh,
That's
ridiculous.
absurd.
Okay. Last thing we should touch on for the Hall of Fame is 14 blank ballots. That's ridiculous. It votes someone in. I think there's, you can say, I think there's about 11 guys on the ballot right now that you could say have a legitimate argument of some sort. I think you have like 4 or 5 guys that, in my mind at least, are definite Hall of Famers, and other guys that should be very close.
Yeah. I don't know. The Hall of Fame, it's it's a different Hall of Fame than some of the other sports Hall of Fames. Like the NBA, the Basketball Hall of Fame is a lot different than the Baseball Hall of Fame. It is not as difficult to make that Hall of Fame. And I am not throwing any shade to any basketball player ever. But when you look at the Baseball Hall of Fame and guys who aren't in there, especially for things they did after their career or things they did to enhance their career, just like Pete Rose. Sure, he gambled when he was a manager. Who cares? He wasn't going to make the Hall of Fame as a manager. The dude has 4,000 hits. That's insane. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And
the thing that's ridiculous about that is if Pete Rose was still a player and he was gambling, this wouldn't have happened because he would have had the protection of the MLBPA, which is ridiculous. Which it's well, manager versus player. What's worse to be gambling on games? You can argue that all day, but
yeah,
that's ridiculous.
Things need to change, and some people are very, very put off by change. But baseball.
We also need to take a long look at the story of shoeless Joe Jackson.
Yeah,
it's not like he did anything.
The second highest batting average in baseball history. He wasn't even directly incorporated in the Black Sox scandal. Throw him in there too. I don't know if there's a committee for like guys who played in the 14th century, but if there is, get Joe Jackson in the Hall of Fame, get Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, get Billy Wagner, Todd Helton, Jeff Kent in the Hall of Fame, and please, if we want to keep this game of baseball alive, which is losing popularity, we need to address that too in another episode. Guys like Bonds and Clemens, who were super exciting to watch. I never got the pleasure to watch them because I was still wearing Pampers, but those guys deserve a spot in Cooperstown. And let's stop ranting on the Hall of Fame. Let's end the episode right there. So this is probably a longer episode. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.